Hi! We're here to do our next episode of Verses. Today we're going to be reviewing
Nirvana-Nevermind. Why is that so dark? The lighting is like really bad.
It's a dark album cover anyway. They can see it. Jeez.
But anyway, probably everyone's seen that before. Possibly owns it. So, yeah.
Start it out.
It's Nirvana and it's Nevermind.
That's all you got to say about it?
Back in the 90s when Nirvana came out and when music started to change because of them, because I think they knocked Michael Jackson off the charts because they had a #1 album or something like that. I don't know if it was the first single or the album, but either way, probably both. I was aware of them because of that, but I wasn't really listening to mainstream music at the time. I was listening to a lot of Christian rock and Christian metal. But I did like Nirvana, and I've listened to a little bit of them, that I heard here and there. And I wasn't too much into a lot of the other bands like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. I like all that stuff now, but at the time, Nirvana was about the only band I really liked from the 90s that was that type of music. So this is the deluxe version, the 20th anniversary that just came out about 2 years ago. Well, it says 2011, so it's been more than 2 years. It has all the extra stuff, B-sides, BBC sessions, all that. But the original album had about probably 5 singles off of it. And of course, everyone knows "Smells Like Teen Spirit" was the first single, and probably what everyone knows from Nirvana. And I don't consider them a one-hit wonder, although some people probably throw them into that category. And I was once I got into Nirvana a little bit more and started buying the rest of their stuff, I got intrigued with, and I remember when Kurt Cobain died, and I remember all that, and I was intrigued by the conspiracy about how he died and that he committed suicide or that he was killed. All these different stories, and I think it just made his legendary status even more so, because when someone dies, it seems to do that. But as far as this album goes, this was a breakthrough album that changed music up through up through the early 90s until this album came out and was so popular. You pretty much just had like all heavy metal bands, which is now called hair metal. And those bands were pretty much running their course. I mean, some of them were still putting out good music, but there was a lot of copy bands at the time, and I think they just needed a change because that was too much excess, and so I can't think when he's in my lap. Cat's taking turns sitting in my lap here. I can't think when he's purring.
Phantom, say hi. Say hi. Say hi. Hi. Anyway. Sorry to interrupt.
I don't know what I was saying now.
Well, I'll just say, I didn't really listen to Nirvana when they were popular. I more or less got into Nirvana more recently. Like Brant and I was listening to Christian music when they were popular and the grunge scene was popular. I did hear Smells Like Teen Spirit, so I was familiar with who they were, but I wasn't like into that whole scene or the music or any of that kind of thing. And when I say Christian music, I mean I was listening to Guardian and White Cross and metal Christian music. That's what I was really into at that point in time. So,
which is odd that we both were at the same time. We didn't know each other back then.
No. But nevertheless, since I've listened to Nirvana more within the last couple of years, I have come to really appreciate their music and the conspiracies behind Kurt Cobain's death, and I find his life very intriguing and sad to some point. So to listen to this album in a whole, which I have never done, was...
Well, you did today.
Right. Was quite inspiring, I guess is a good word. I really enjoyed the album as a whole. But my favorite song off of it is Lithium. So that's all I got to say about that.
Well, I don't remember what I was saying before. Before the cat made a...
I'm sorry, I distracted him.
It don't take much. We have that in common, too. What I was saying was how Nirvana changed a lot of the music into... because their look wasn't really a look. It wasn't an image. It was just... It became that, or people made it out to be that. They were just dressing in the regular clothes that they were used to wearing and created a scene without trying to. And a lot of other bands that really didn't look or sound like Nirvana sort of got clumped into the same thing just because they were from Seattle, or whatever. But regardless of that, there's a handful of bands, and I've said this before, that come around every so often that changes music, and usually every 10, 12 years that usually happens. It hasn't happened in a long time. Probably since Nirvana, there hasn't really been any of that. It seems like music is just sort of like boring and all the same. I mean, there's exceptions to that, but overall there's not really like any iconic bands that's came out. There's some artists here and there, but anyway, I liked this album because it was like, I don't want to say modern sounding punk, but because it's not really punk. I mean, I think of the term grunge just because that's what it's drilled into our heads that it is. I don't disagree with that, but it doesn't sound like the Sex Pistols, because when I think of punk, I think of the Ramones and the Sex Pistols, and it doesn't really sound like that. Kurt Cobain said it was like, how did he describe it? Something about some band being molested by another band. I can't remember the bands he referred to. I think it was Black Sabbath, and I don't remember. But lost my train of thought again.
Well, I will say, with him making the statement about all the bands being clumped into a Seattle group, which what became grunge, so to speak. When I read Anne and Nancy Wilson's book, one of the things that Anne kind of touched on in the book was her interaction with those Seattle bands, because Anne and Nancy both are based out of Seattle. So it was quite interesting to hear her reference to Kirk or...
They're from Clark, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh, did you say that?
Yeah. Kurt or Rage Against the Machine. I think his lead singer, is the one that they referred to. I think that's who it was. But anyway, it was just really, really interesting to hear the part and the influence that they played, especially Anne, on those bands at that time in that era of music. Anne referred to a lot of those people coming to her house and having jam sessions, and so that to me was extremely interesting, considering the fact that I'm such a Heart fan, a big Heart fan, and not so much a grunge fan. So that kind of intrigued me to kind of maybe dig a little deeper into that genre of music. So therefore, Nirvana being the best known, the most known from that genre.
Other than probably Pearl Jam.
Probably Pearl Jam, yeah. I have to say, kudos to Kurt. I mean, he's a very unique individual, and he allowed his emotions and his feelings and his thought process to come through very clearly through his music, even when people really did not understand some of the things he was singing about or referring to. So he was the kind of person that lived life the way he wanted to live it, and yet in tragedy, not being understood took a very large toll on his mental health, in my opinion, I would say. Did you have a favorite song off this album?
I like the album as a whole, which I say that all the time, but I like probably In Bloom would be my favorite song if I had to pick one. And I like the video too. It's like a throwback to the old 50s, like Dick Clark, American Bandstand type videos where they use, and they actually got one of those original cameras, I think, to film it, and they interject it with old fan footage or the crowd footage of the girls screaming and stuff, like they did on the Ed Sullivan Show and everything. But I like that video. But yeah, that song is probably my favorite one. A lot of people would probably pick Smells Like Teen Spirit just because it's the most known. But I mention I like that. I like the whole album.
I mean, yeah, I don't dislike that song, but it's by far my favorite.
What is?
It Smells Like Teen Spirit.
It is.
I said by far. No, it's not.
No.
I already said my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
How many spins would you give it?
Well, 10.
I think I would go maybe a little lower and say 7. 7 spins on the Richter scale. On the
spin scale.
On the
spin cycle.
Turntable. So you have anything else you want to add?
No.
We're so excited tonight. I'm so sorry. We've been putting up Christmas decorations all day and other things around the house, so we're kind of a little spent tonight.
I've been like that all day, though.
Yeah, he has been kind of unmotivated today. So next time we're going to review, drum roll,
I don't have a drum.
Blackberry Smoke, Whippoorwill. That's what we're doing. I guess we'll see you next time. Ciao!